Today, we're diving into the work of a man who was, well, a true force of nature. A sculptor who could see entire figures just trapped inside a block of stone, a painter who wasn't afraid to challenge popes, and an architect who completely reshaped Rome. This is the story of Michelangelo, and how just a handful of his creations cemented his legacy forever.
I mean, that's a huge question, right? But when you're talking about someone like Michelangelo, it's really the only one that fits. His work wasn't just pretty to look at. It was a fundamental shift in how people saw themselves, their potential, their power, their beauty. So where did this whole revolution even start? It all began with stone.
You know, before he was painting heavens, Michelangelo's language was marble. His whole journey to becoming a master really started with a chisel in his hand, in the medium where he first showed the world his absolutely incredible talent.
Okay, just look at this. Here you see his genius in two completely different modes. On the left, you've got the Pietà, this masterpiece of quiet sorrow and unbelievable grace. I mean, how do you make cold, hard marble look as soft as Mary's robes? It's just incredible. And then, only a few years later, boom, he gives us David. This isn't the hero after the fight is over. This is David before the battle. All that tension, that focus, that raw power. To capture both profound sadness and defiant strength. In stone, that's what made him a legend.
So after basically conquering the world of sculpture, you'd think he'd just stick to what he was famous for, right? Well, Pope Julius II had other plans. He gave Michelangelo a commission that was so massive, so ambitious, it almost felt like a setup. And get this, Michelangelo famously thought painting was a lesser art form, and now he was being tasked with painting the entire ceiling of the Sistine Chapel.
4 years. Let that sink in for a second. From 1508 to 1512, can you imagine spending 4 years of your life on your back, way up on some scaffolding, painting over 5,000 square feet of ceiling? This number isn't just a piece of trivia, it represents a mind-boggling test of physical endurance and pure artistic vision.
And what exactly was he painting up there? Oh, just the story of the beginning of humanity. It's this epic, grand biblical cycle that unfolds across the ceiling. We're talking 9 huge scenes from the book of Genesis, from creation itself to the Great Flood, all surrounded by these powerful figures of prophets and sibyls. He wasn't just painting scenes, he was creating an entire theological universe right above everyone's heads.
And right at the very heart of this immense masterpiece, you find this one, single, iconic moment. Out of hundreds of figures, it's the creation of Adam that pretty much everyone on Earth can recognize instantly. That little space, that tiny gap between God's finger and Adam's, it might just be the most powerful empty space in the entire history of art. It's the spark of life itself, captured for all time.
But here's the thing. Michelangelo's story with the Sistine Chapel wasn't done, not by a long shot. Decades later, as an older, more world-weary man, he was called back to make one final, monumental statement on those sacred walls. This timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? He finished the ceiling way back in 1512, but he didn't start this next commission until 1536. That's nearly a quarter of a century later. So you have to realize, the artist who came back to the chapel was not the same young man who had painted that ceiling. He'd changed.
And wow, can you feel that change in the work? The Last Judgment is a swirling, chaotic, and honestly kind of terrifying vision of the apocalypse. All that perfect, ordered harmony you saw on the ceiling, gone. This is turbulent, it's powerful, and it feels deeply personal. It reflects all the turmoil that both he and the world had been through in those intervening decades.
Now, while the Sistine Chapel is probably his most famous project, if you stop there, you're missing the sheer scope of his genius. Michelangelo wasn't just a painter or just a sculptor. He was an architect, too. He was the whole package.
His creativity just couldn't be contained in one place. Take a look at this. You've got his sculpture of Moses, which is so intense it feels like he's about to stand up and yell at you. Then he also painted, like in the Doni Tondo. It's his only finished panel painting. And even here, the figures almost look like they were sculpted, not painted. And then he just casually becomes a revolutionary architect, designing the Laurentian Library with the staircase that just flows down like liquid stone, breaking all the architectural rules of his time.
And that's really the main takeaway here. It didn't matter if he was holding a chisel, a paintbrush, or architectural blueprints. His creative energy was just unstoppable. He was, in every sense of the word, the complete artist. So we're left with this question. How does somebody become a giant like that? Was it a relentless, obsessive drive? A gift from God?
Or just a will so strong it could defy popes and conquer solid stone? When you look at the legacy of Michelangelo, you realize the answer is, yeah, it was all of the above. And that's how you don't just create art. That's how you define an entire age.